Laowinners, this is Laowinners here with another video. I'm here in beautiful Guangzhou. I want to tell you guys why you shouldn't find one of these. You don't want one of these in your life, trust me. These things are a burden and a half, these Chinese girls. And if I could go back, you better believe I wouldn't have one. So get the hell out of here. We're gonna teach you guys, what's up, what you should look for. And to be honest, why maybe it might not be a good idea for you to pursue a Chinese girl or a Chinese man if you don't know a whole lot about China. Just gotta get a cool shot. Hold on. Here, walk by the camera. There, that shows the people that we're heading outside because we just mentioned it. Okay, cool. Hey Vivi, can you push the button again? I gotta show people that we're going down. There you go. You don't have to push it so much though. There you go. Here, go in. Okay, now I have to stay outside while you close the door. People will think that we went down together. Okay, cool. Just walk by. There you go. So a cool thing to do actually, if you don't want to show people like the whole walking process, to speed it up, you go like this. And you cover up the camera like this. And then when I pull my hand away, it'll be a new scene, but we're still at the same, it's still us.
Annoying!
And we're here. This doesn't look that different from where we just were. That trick didn't work very well. I'll get this vlogging thing at some point. To be honest, no bullshit aside, I'm gonna sound like a dick today, but a realistic and reasonable dick. And the only reason I say this is because the subscribers that I have, a lot of them ask Vivi and I for relationship advice. We've been called relationship goals before. Some people are jealous of how close we are and how good we get along. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? But that did come with a price, and the price was my freedom. Just joking. I wanted to talk a little bit about why it might not be the best idea for a lot of people to, specifically try to find a mainland Chinese relationship without knowing what they're getting into. And the first thing is this. When you come here, just the fact that it's a really, really exotic and amazing and crazy country can kind of take you out of reality and put you in a place where you can't really fend for yourself. So I see a lot of people that come over here, especially with English teaching jobs and stuff, whether you're male or female, and try to find a local person to help you out with a lot of stuff, because without knowing Chinese, you can't do shit here. I mean, whether it's paying your phone bill, or you're getting your electricity turned back on, or trying to ship something abroad, or all kinds of stuff, all that clerical stuff. You need an assistant, right? And I see a lot of people using their assistant at work as their personal assistant as well. And usually Chinese people are super nice and nice enough to be able to do that, be really helpful. But oftentimes it turns into a relationship. And the first caveat, my first point, is don't date your assistant. That should be very, very obvious advice, to be honest.
That will piss a lot of Chinese off.
Absolutely. Well, it really looks like you're taking advantage. And definitely don't date students, by the way. I'm just gonna throw that out there. Don't date students. That's a terrible idea.
Why don't you take a seat right over there?
You will be using Chinese assistants for getting stuff done here. And it's a necessity, I understand it, but it's easy to fall into the trap of getting a little bit too close to the people that are helping you out, rather than finding someone that's just gets along with you, someone that you're attracted to. So I found that a lot of people that end up in relationships out of convenience rather than loving someone or being genuinely interested in them causes a lot of problems down the road, as you could probably foresee. Number two, a lot of people that come over here actually will come over here with the intention of finding a relationship with someone in mainland China. And that's another huge mistake, at least if you're asking me, because if you come over here even with a minor understanding or interest, which is a key in China or Chinese culture, you don't understand the shitstorm that you might be putting yourself into, because for all the concessions, for all of the give and take that you're willing to do, I don't think that a lot of people here, especially people that have never been abroad, would give you that same give and take or understanding. China's much more traditional and rooted in kind of habits and traditions, especially involving family, than you might be if you're a Westerner. So That's a huge, huge problem later on. The beginning might be this kind of like really cute, exotic dating experience where you kind of don't understand each other, but it's body language and you're making the eye contact and flirting, and it's super fun and something new. And you're like, damn, this is so much better than back home, you know, with these needy white girls that just complain all the time. But you'll find out what needy is very, very soon in China with a lot of people, that's for sure. Generalizations aside, it can work out. I've seen a lot of people end up with mainland Chinese relationships, and it has worked out, but for the most part it usually ends up in breakups, and it can end up in pretty nasty breakups sometimes. I've seen people get all their clothes cut up. I've seen people have to go home heartbroken because the girl or the Chinese male's family doesn't accept their relationship. And I've also seen it go so far that they are willing to kind of bend and not be able to deal with their differences, but kind of cope with it for long enough to the point where they get married and they end up with kids and divorce. And it can be that ugly, don't you think? Mm-hmm. Vivi, turn around. See how that sign says winking? Starry winking? Give me a wink. Hold on, I gotta zoom. Go ahead, wink. Yeah, and then back on there. Oh shit. So, why is it so important to find someone who's at least been abroad or been to the West, or maybe even the Western educated, best case scenario? Well, the amount of exposure that Chinese people get to the outside world is severely limited. I mean, you have a handful of TV shows that are allowed to be shown here, and that's being cracked down on. You have Hollywood movies and stuff, but the typical movies that people actually enjoy here are not quite in line with Western taste. You see, one of the most popular movies of all time here was Transformers. And that kind of says a little bit about exposure to Hollywood movies for sure. And number three, the internet's blocked, and most people don't have VPN. So, I mean, their interpretation of the outside world is still way, way, way behind most countries out there that have freedom of access or even a higher English standard, because language is a huge barrier. Now, my wife actually shot a video where she was talking about this very topic, but from her perspective. And one of the most interesting and most of the important points, and this is actually tying into why it's better to find someone who's been Western educated, but one of the most important things you can do if you're going to get to know someone is speak their own language. If you come over here fluent in Chinese, which is something I've never seen before, you know, just people studying abroad and then coming over here, that's fine. But you're usually going to rely on the fact that your girlfriend or boyfriend is going to have some semblance of English under their belt. And there's a big difference between communicative English and what they actually learn in school. So they might be able to have basic conversations, but the cultural nuances and sarcasm and all that stuff that makes us, you know, our sense of humor and our personality, us, comes from the fact that we speak our native language of English. Now, when you find someone here that doesn't have that skill, it's very difficult to ever understand what they're talking about and for them to actually understand you on a personal level. And I can't stress to you how important that actually is. I've seen people that have, you know, said the moment that we locked eyes, we knew, even though we didn't speak each other's language, you know, it's super sweet of them, you know, that love story. But I knew it was true love, is what they say. That's romantic, I understand that, but there's so much to be said for actual conversation and give and take and getting to know each other on a more personal level than just looking at each other and know that you're in love, because that isn't love, that's just infatuation. Little sweet nothings and little favors and gifts and all those little kind of things that make you fall in love with a Chinese girl to begin with in the beginning. Things like, a lot of people say, I met this Chinese girl and she just randomly cleaned my house. I met this Chinese girl and she came to my work and brought me a home-cooked lunch. All of these really, really sweet, beautiful things that you'll often find tend to go away after a very short amount of time. It's just in the courtship phase. So finding someone that you can kind of communicate with and break through all that bullshit, so there's no need for those kind of impersonal nuances, super, super important. And for some personal details, I've noticed that my wife is looking at something behind me. Is there someone with a knife in my back? Vivi? The last point is just some personal examples. Instead of me sounding all preachy and saying you can't love who you're supposed to love, the general impression that I get is not from my own personal experience. It's not from the fact that I think it's bullshit for people to choose people based on what they like aesthetically. My experience comes from seeing my friends around me that have fallen into this trap. And I have one success story. One of my really, really good friends, Dustin, actually married a mainlander that had never been to America before, and they are super happy and super chuffed. He is the outlier out of 10 examples I could give you right now, and that is because he learned fluent Chinese. He was actually pissed off one time because I would always people would always say my Chinese is so much better than his because he had just got to China at that point. But he just went, he hit the books, and his Chinese is a lot better than mine right now. And they're super happy, and they're living in America together, and everything's super, super hunky-dory, and it's awesome. But 9 other examples that I could pull out of my ass right now are super, super scary and sad. 2 of my friends just got divorced this year with their Chinese wives, and it was one of those stories where they would send me a message and say, hey, your videos helped me out a lot. I finally found a Chinese girl, and I hope we have such an awesome relationship like you and Vivi have. And I learned so much from you. You know, sometimes we argue, and there's a lot of cultural differences, and her parents don't really accept me, but we're gonna have a happily ever after life because we love each other and understand each other. And this year they both got divorced. And the divorce came out of cultural misunderstandings. For the first part, one of the guys, poor guy, didn't really have enough money to satisfy her needs. So she wanted a bigger house, she wanted a car just for herself, and he wasn't a rich man, but she thought that he could at least grow into it. And a couple years after, it didn't happen. She dumped him. She left him for a Chinese guy. The second example I have is because of family issues. When the guy actually got married and eloped in America to his Chinese wife, and they went to move back to China after that quick marriage, her parents completely rejected her and basically said, never show up again at this house without this guy. He doesn't have a house here in China. He doesn't have a car in China. What are you gonna do with this scumbag from the West that we can't even communicate with? And they stayed together for a little while, but this year they got divorced, and she left him as well. It's usually the case where the foreigner, the Westerner, doesn't leave the Chinese girl, it's vice versa. Some of the other scenarios are with girlfriends. I mentioned earlier, one of my friends actually had all of his clothing cut up, and this is because she was so suspicious and jealous, and this is an honest guy, he never cheated on her or anything, but so suspicious and jealous that when he would text coworkers and say, hey, can you bring classroom prep materials to the class, she would get into her head so fervorously that, and so honestly, she honestly believed that he was really having affairs at work with girls just because he was communicating with them, and it was psychopathy, seriously, it was nuts. And he came back to his apartment one time, and all of his clothes were laying on the floor, cut up into tiny little pieces with scissors. Some of them burnt. She burnt some of them in the sink, and she left him as well. I don't think that everyone has these crazy, unbelievable, oddball scenarios. I think in most cases it just winds up, you know, the fact that people just don't know each other very well because of the communication issue. But I can't stress how important it is for me. If I could go back in time, and Vivi didn't, you know, exist, but I had all the knowledge that I do now, I would never choose to date, even with my knowledge of China, my Chinese level, choose to date a mainland girl unless she really stood out from the crowd in that she could have some give or take and some understanding of my culture. So when you know, I bring her back home, she can get along with my family, and you know, when I meet her family, things don't go tits up and everything gets screwed up. So I know I'm sounding like a massive dick right now and trying to judge and push people's relationship choices, but it's because of subscribers contacting me and saying, I'm just like you now, I have a Chinese wife, we have so much in common, this is awesome, thanks for your advice, and then later on sending me heartbreak emails or sometimes Skype phone calls where they're crying, explaining their situation and how they have to leave China and they have nothing now. Really kind of pulls my heartstrings. It really pulls my heartstrings. And it goes beyond coworkers and friends having that experience. It's people that I feel responsible for because they watch my videos for some inspiration and maybe got the idea to be with a Chinese girl from watching these videos, as crazy as that seems. So it's my duty to tell the truth out there. Also, we're gonna talk a lot, and I talk to all my patrons a lot about relationship advice. Our Patreon has kind of turned into half a place to community for Laowinners, and you know, my wife's patron for her subscribers, to just hang out and see extra content and be able to vote on new video ideas and things like that, but also a place where people ask advice if they have relationships with Chinese people or maybe just need a little bit more understanding about China in general. I always reply. So head over there if you want to see that. I want to say, if you enjoyed this video, please write a comment down below as to why you think maybe intercultural relationships could or couldn't work, and maybe some success and failure stories so that other people can learn from them as well. I want to say thank you so much, Laowinners, and I will catch you on the next one.